On my 21st birthday, my boyfriend threw a massive party to celebrate. One shot of tequila later, a blistering heat ignited deep inside my body. Someone had drugged me. Fighting through the strange haze, I went looking for him, only to hear his voice from around the corner of the hallway. I don't buy into that old money, keeping it in the family crap. I believe in myself. Zoe, I swear, I will make you the future matriarch of the Vance family, he said. As for Lily, after tonight, the campus forums will be flooded with pictures of her sleeping around. She'll be a pathetic joke I can control whenever I want. The world went dark for a second. This was the man I had loved for 3 years. I had nowhere to run. My hand shaking, I pulled up a contact saved only as a Jack. The man who answered was the same one who had always been a bastion of cool self-control, a man 10 years my senior. Jack, I don't feel so good. I want a. The line went silent for a moment, and then his voice came back, low and suppressed, like magma churning beneath the earth. Stay calm. Send me your location. E. Don't move from where you are. I'm coming to get you. 01. The strobe lights were blinding. I was shoved roughly onto the soft couch in a private room upstairs. My head was spinning, my mouth bone dry. An anonymous fire was burning me up from the inside. Unconsciously, I started tearing at the collar of my dress, desperate for a breath of cool air against my scorching skin. I yearned to press myself against someone's cool body, anything to quench the inferno. Well, look at you, little slut. Can't wait, can you? Don't worry, I'm here to take care of you. A strange voice exploded next to my ear, yanking me back to reality. This was wrong. I had been drugged. Today was my 21st birthday. Who would want to destroy me like this? A strange man was pressing down on me, shamelessly ripping at my dress. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood, the sharp pain granting me a fleeting moment of clarity. My hand fumbled across the coffee table and found a bottle opener. With every ounce of strength I had left, I smashed it against his forehead. He let out a muffled grunt. The man clutched his head as blood streamed through his fingers. I pushed him off, clutching my torn dress as I scrambled for the door. Call the police? No, not like this. They'd just see a college party hookup gone wrong, and it would be my word against his. Go home? Even worse. My parents would be devastated. The drug was getting stronger. I braced myself against the wall, stumbling out of the house and into the night air. The cold wind made me shiver, but the fire inside me only raged hotter. There was only one person I could turn to now. Jack. Jack, who had just gotten back from a deployment. Jack Donovan. 02. Jack's condo wasn't far. He was my father's most trusted protégé, his closest brother in arms, and the guardian who had watched me grow up. But he had just returned from an overseas mission. We hadn't seen each other in almost a year. And he was a man defined by discipline, radiating the ironclad aura of a career soldier. If he saw me like this. Behind me, I could faintly hear Caleb's angry shouting and the sound of approaching footsteps. He had realized I was gone. She's trying to run. Zoe, quick, don't let her get away. My phone is still recording. Don't worry, Caleb, I've got my eyes on her. The voice of Zoe, the girl I thought was my best friend, was laced with excitement. I couldn't hesitate. Throwing caution to the wind, I ran into the darkness. With a trembling hand, I pressed the buzzer to his apartment. The door opened almost instantly. The first thing that hit me was his unique scent, as crisp and clean as a pine forest after a snowfall. I stood in the doorway, anxiously looking up at the tall, imposing figure before me. A year had made the lines of his face sharper, more aggressively handsome than I remembered. He had a strong nose and thin, severe lips. The moment our eyes met, a shiver ran down my spine. My blood felt like it had been lit on fire, and a tingling, numbing itch spread through my entire body. Every inch of my skin felt like it was being crawled on by ants. I clutched the torn hem of my dress, and when I spoke, my voice was so soft it was practically liquid. Jack, I feel awful. It's so hot. Jack, who had always been as unshakable as a mountain, stared down at me. His dark pupils reflected my current state, face flushed, eyes glassy with unshed tears, clothes in disarray. Utterly broken. The door slammed shut with a bang. He pulled me inside. The second our skin touched, the cool feel of his arm made me let out a sigh of pure relief. My strength evaporated, and I sagged against him, my entire body clinging to his. I instinctively rubbed against him, desperately seeking more of that precious coolness. Outside, I could hear Caleb's voice. Weird, where did she go? I swear I saw her run into this building. With one arm holding me, Jack picked up his phone with the other. His voice was as cold as ice. Hello, San Diego PD. I'd like to report a disturbance at a secure residential building. Being this close, I could hear the restrained tremor in his throat. After a few more words, he hung up. Sirens wailed in the distance moments later, and the voices outside vanished. The danger was gone. But I was still clinging to Jack Donovan's chest, my hands fisted in the fabric of his tactical shirt, trying to burrow deeper into his embrace, greedy for the coolness of his body. His waist, hardened by years of training, was lethally attractive. And lower. Ear. A low, restrained grunt escaped his lips. My hand was suddenly pinned by his skin scorching hot. My heart was pounding. The world spun, the tattered hem of my dress flying. Jack carried me to the bed. His movements were gentle and controlled, but his eyes looked like they wanted to devour me whole. He reached out a long-fingered hand and touched my forehead. His Adam's apple bobbed violently. Lily, you're burning up. Don't move. I'll get a thermometer. 03. I shook my head, miserable. The drug was an inferno inside me. All I could do was beg him with a tear-filled voice, Jack. I want air. I need. Jack's throat tightened as he looked at me. The pads of his fingers, calloused from years of handling firearms, rested on my wrist. The rough texture sent a jolt of heat through me. After a moment, he let go, his breathing uneven as he leaned in closer. His distinctly masculine scent filled my senses, his large frame casting a shadow over me. And under his presence, I melted like a puddle of spring water. Lily, you've been drugged. This is a massive dose. Don't be afraid. I'll go get you something. Otherwise, this could cause permanent neurological damage. His hoarse voice was a siren's call, and my heart fluttered. I wasn't listening to his words. My entire focus was on his thin lips as they moved. They were pale, but impossibly tempting. All I had to do was tilt my head up, and I could kiss him. I swallowed hard and wrapped my arms around his neck. In his suddenly constricting pupils, I saw myself, hair spread like a dark waterfall across the white pillows. Like some kind of siren. A complete stranger from the quiet, well-behaved girl I usually was. When I spoke again, my voice was a seductive purr. Jack, I want you. One of Jack's hands supported my waist. The other cupped my face. Every touch sent a tremor through me. His eyes, too, were filled with raw desire. Lily, Do you know who I am? E. I know. You're Jack. You're Jack Donovan. Good girl. Whatever you want, Lily, I'll give it to you. 04 morning light pierced through a gap in the curtains, landing on my face. My head throbbed as if from a massive hangover. Memories of last night flooded back in fragmented, yet incredibly vivid, pieces. Jack's searing body heat, his ragged breathing, and my own shameless pleas. My cheeks instantly burned hot. I shot up in bed, a wave of shame threatening to drown me. The room was empty. The air still held the lingering scent of his crisp, pine-like cologne and the faint smell of tobacco. He was gone. A strange emptiness settled in my chest. On the nightstand sat a glass of water and a blister pack of pills. A note was tucked underneath. The handwriting was sharp, forceful, the script of a disciplined soldier. Take these when you wake up. Get some rest. E. Draped over the back of a nearby chair was a brand new dress and underwear, the tags still on. My face burned even hotter. I fled Jack's apartment and returned to campus. The moment I stepped on university grounds, I knew something was wrong. The stares I got were like poisoned needles, pricking me from every direction. The whispers were like a swarm of buzzing flies drilling into my ears. Look, that's her, Lily Morgan. I heard she was really wild at the party last night, with multiple guys. Caleb Vance really dodged a bullet. His girlfriend is so trashy. My blood ran cold. Caleb had acted faster and more viciously than I could have imagined. I clenched my fists and walked faster, desperate to reach the sanctuary of my dorm room. But as I reached the main academic building, a crowd of people blocked my path. Leading them was Caleb. He had dark circles under his eyes and a conspicuous bandage on his forehead. He looked exhausted. Zoe Carter stood beside him, clutching his arm with a look of profound concern. When she saw me, a flicker of triumph flashed in her eyes. When Caleb saw me, he looked at me like I was something disgusting, his eyes filled with revulsion and pain. He pointed a finger at me, his voice trembling with emotion, as if he were the real victim. Lily, you still have the nerve to show your face here? The crowd erupted, all eyes focused on me. I stared back at his pathetic performance, my face a cold mask. My expression seemed to sting him. He lunged forward, his voice cracking as he screamed, "You were out all night messing around with some random guy. What do you have to say for yourself? I loved you so much. How could you do this to me? I've already spoken to the dean. The university has to punish a student with such corrupt morals." Every word was a poisoned dagger aimed straight at my heart. The pointing fingers and judgmental stares formed a suffocating net around me. I was freezing, shaking with rage. This was the man I had loved for 3 years, a master of lies, utterly shameless. Under the weight of everyone's gaze, a strange calm settled over me. I met his deceitful eyes and curled my lip into an icy smile. "Oh, really? In that case, let's call the police." The moment I said it, the air seemed to freeze. Caleb's face turned a deep shade of purple. He clearly hadn't expected that. The crowd's whispers exploded like grease in a hot pan. "The police? She dares to call the cops. She must be bluffing, trying to scare him." Just then, a middle-aged woman with glasses pushed her way through the crowd. It was Dean Albright. She looked at me with severe disappointment. "Lily, my office, now." The dean's arrival was like a shot of adrenaline for Caleb. He immediately adopted a look of profound heartbreak, pointing at me with a voice thick with faux tears. "Dean, you're just in time. I never knew Lily was this kind of person." "I'm so disappointed in her." Zoe immediately jumped in, whispering to the people around them, Caleb is just too kind. That's how she was able to deceive him so badly. Their little performance was perfectly choreographed to nail me to the cross. The dean's expression soured even more. She looked at me as if I were irredeemable trash. My heart sank into a cold, dark abyss. So this is what it feels like to be utterly defenseless. Just as the immense pressure was about to crush me, a voice as sharp and cold as ice cut through the noise. Who's taking her anywhere? The crowd parted automatically. A tall figure strode toward us, backlit by the sun. His military-issue boots made a steady, powerful sound on the pavement, each step landing like a hammer blow on everyone's nerves. It was Jack Donovan. He was in his full dress uniform, the insignia on his shoulders glinting in the sunlight. His handsome, sharp features were set like stone, and his eyes swept over the crowd like blades. The noisy mob fell silent instantly. The smug look on Caleb's face froze. Even Dean Albright was stunned, instinctively adjusting her glasses. Jack walked straight to me without a glance at anyone else. His tall frame completely shielded me, blocking out all the hostile stares. He didn't even look at Caleb, his gaze landing squarely on the dean. His tone was level but carried an authority that couldn't be questioned. I'm Lily's uncle. Then, he produced a neatly folded piece of paper and handed it to her. This is her emergency room report from the Naval Medical Center from last night. Acute anaphylaxis leading to a febrile seizure. Do you need me to have the attending physician come down here and confirm it with you in person? The color drained from the dean's face. Caleb's mouth opened, but no words came out. Only then did Jack turn his gaze to me, and the icy look in his eyes thawed ever so slightly. He produced a velvet box and opened it in front of me. Inside was a Patek Philippe lady's watch. Lily, a belated birthday present. I came by to give this to her last night and found her having a severe food allergy attack. The situation was critical, so I took her to the hospital myself. The story was flawless. Caleb's face cycled through shades of white, green, and then nearly black. It was quite a show. The tide of public opinion turned in an instant. So it was just a food allergy. We almost accused an innocent person. I knew Lily wasn't like that. Caleb is such a liar. Jack's long fingers rested gently on my shoulder, the warmth seeping through my thin shirt. I flinched slightly, suddenly realizing what he had done. He had saved me with a perfect lie. A lie that belonged only to the two of us. The surrounding chatter faded into a nervous silence. Jack's hand on my shoulder was a warm, steadying presence. He led me through the crowd, which parted for us like the Red Sea. We got into his black SUV, and the moment the door closed, it sealed off the prying world outside. The confined space was filled with his clean, pine scent, mixed with a hint of tobacco. It was the scent of last night. My cheeks flushed uncontrollably. Neither of us spoke. The heavy silence fermented in the car. After a long moment, he lit a cigarette but didn't smoke it, just holding it between his fingers, letting the white smoke curl into the air. Lily. He finally spoke, his voice much hoarser than it had been in front of the crowd. Last night, I was an animal. My heart leaped. I looked up at him sharply. He wasn't looking at me. In the flickering glow of the cigarette, his profile was hard, chiseled, and filled with pain. I've watched you grow up. From a little girl into the woman you are today. I told myself I was your guardian, your uncle. A line I could never cross. His voice was low, as if recounting a story about someone else, but the slight tremble in his knuckles betrayed the storm of emotion inside him. I requested deployments to the most dangerous places on Earth, just trying to get you out of my head. I thought if I was far enough away, for long enough, I would eventually forget. The light from outside swept across his strong brow, casting it in shadow. But then you called, and all you said was, "Jack, I don't feel so good." He violently extinguished the cigarette in the car's ashtray with a sharp, grating sound. And every wall I had ever built came crashing down. My mind went completely blank. All those years of his distance, his coolness. It wasn't dislike. Behind that ironclad self-discipline, he was hiding a love this deep, this intense. The shame and absurdity of the previous night were suddenly redefined by his confession. It wasn't an accident. It was a long-simmering loss of control. My heart was beating so fast and hard I thought it would jump out of my throat. Dependence, gratitude, and a new, indefinable flutter of emotion grew wildly inside me. The car fell silent again. He leaned back against the seat like a statue that had exhausted all its energy, his eyes closed, his Adam's apple bobbing. He radiated an air of utter, suppressed defeat. I looked at him, at this man who had shielded me with a lie, at this man who had suffered in silence with his love for me. Something deep inside my chest ached. I reached out a trembling hand and gently placed it over his, which was clenched into a tight fist on the gear shift. He flinched as if burned, his eyes flying open. In those dark pupils, I saw shock, restraint, and a deep, swirling vortex that threatened to pull me in. I didn't back down. Meeting his gaze, I asked in a voice so quiet only he could hear, "Jack, all these years. Has it hurt?" My question hung in the small space of the car like a needle, puncturing the tight balloon of his composure. Jack's body went rigid. His eyes, which had been squeezed shut, flew open to reveal a tidal wave of emotion, a 10-year abyss of suppressed desire. He didn't answer. The air was so thick you could feel the smoke from his cigarette hanging motionless. The next second, his hand gripping my wrist tightened, and his other hand shot out to cup my jaw, forcing my head up. His scent, his presence, everything about him, overwhelmed me. The kiss was punishing, crushing my lips, prying them open, and stealing my breath. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't a test. It was a loss of control, a declaration. It was the volcanic eruption of a man's decade of restraint. I didn't fight it. I let myself be consumed by the storm. And with a kiss just as wild, I gave him my answer. A week later, a business news alert rocked the entire university's business school. Vance Capital, under investigation for massive financial fraud and tax evasion. All core accounting ledgers have been seized as conclusive evidence. IPO plans have been terminated, and federal investigators are now involved. On the screen, Vance Capital's stock was a sea of red, in a complete free-fall. From my dorm room, I could hear Zoe Carter's hysterical sobs through the door. My phone buzzed with a string of frantic texts from Caleb. "Lily, this was you, wasn't it? You bitch. Who's helping you? I'm begging you, please, leave my family alone. I'll get on my knees, I'll do anything." I stared at the words, then calmly pressed delete. I felt nothing. I simply packed a bag, walked out of the dorm, and went to the secure residential building that was becoming more and more familiar. I rang the bell once, and the door opened. Jack was dressed in a simple black t-shirt and olive drab cargo pants, his posture as straight as a pine tree. The sharp, cold edge was gone, replaced by a softer, domestic warmth. He smiled when he saw me, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners as he naturally took the bag from my hand. "You're back." I nodded, slipping into the women's slippers he had waiting for me and following him into the living room. On the coffee table was a laptop, the screen displaying the glaring news about Vance Capital. He didn't close it or try to explain. He treated it like an unimportant weather forecast. I walked over and stood in front of him, looking up. I saw the news about Caleb's family. Jack's gaze fell on my face, his deep eyes unreadable. He reached up, the pad of his thumb gently stroking my cheek, his touch as delicate as if he were handling a priceless treasure. He touched someone he never should have. His voice was quiet, but it held the finality of a judge's sentence. He leaned in closer, his tall frame enveloping me completely, his warm breath ghosting against my ear. Lily, in this world, no one gets to hurt you. Not in the past, not now, and not ever. My heart trembled. I reached out and wrapped my arms around his solid waist. I buried my face in his chest, which smelled faintly of clean soap, and listened to the strong, steady beat of his heart. This time, I didn't run. I stayed buried in his chest, greedily soaking in the security that was mine alone. After a long time, Jack loosened his hold and led me to the sofa. The laptop, with its glaring screen, sat right in front of us. "Want to know how I did it?" he asked. I nodded, my heart hammering against my ribs. He didn't give me a long explanation. He just scrolled up on the news article, revealing the media outlet's name. And beneath that, in tiny print, was the logo of an investment firm. A single, gold-stamped D. E. The Donovans, from D. C. He said, the words dropping like a depth charge into the calm lake of my mind. Your father never mentioned them? My brain went blank with a deafening buzz. The Donovans of D. C. A family that existed only in whispers, a powerhouse that could make the entire political and business world tremble with a single move. The man I had known for 10 years, my protector, was one of them. I stared at him. It was the same handsome face, but he seemed to be shrouded in a new, intimidating aura. To deal with someone like Caleb, he said, meeting my shocked gaze, his thumb gently brushing the corner of my mouth, his eyes as deep as the ocean, you can't just give him a warning. That only makes him think you're weak. You have to strike once, and make it fatal. Ensure he can never get back on his feet, never appear in front of you and taint your world again. His voice was soft, but it carried a ruthless finality. Just then, a news alert popped up in the corner of the screen. The headline was sensational. Evans case latest. Victim's best friend Zoe Carter flips, provides key evidence of Caleb Vance's depraved private life. In the accompanying photo, Zoe was surrounded by reporters, her face a mess of tears. She had turned on Caleb. I instinctively looked at Jack. He glanced at the screen, his dark eyes showing no reaction, as if he had expected it all along. He reached out and snapped the laptop shut with a crisp click. It sealed off all the noise and ugliness of the outside world. The next second, he cupped my chin, forcing me to look up at him. His presence was overpowering, wrapping around me completely. Lily, I'll take out the trash. All you have to do. His warm lips pressed against my forehead, his voice low and hoarse, a declaration I couldn't refuse. Is look at me. After that day, I moved into Jack's condo. Caleb and Zoe vanished from my life like two specks of dust blown away by the wind. The forbidden, blurry line between Jack and me had been shattered by him, and everything that followed felt natural, inevitable. He would ask me the night before what I wanted to eat the next day, and while I was still sleeping in, the scent of breakfast would already be wafting from the kitchen. He would silently lift me onto the sofa in his home office, letting me use his lap as a pillow while I watched movies, while he worked on classified military documents I couldn't comprehend. The air between us was no longer thick with tension, but with a sweet, almost suffocating tenderness. That weekend, he drove me to the Donovan family estate. It was a sprawling, historic compound hidden deep in the Virginia countryside, stately and imposing, with armed guards standing at the gate. It was only then that I belatedly realized the Jackie I thought I knew and the Jack Donovan I was truly with were from two different worlds. His parents, a warm and elegant couple, showed no surprise when they saw me. Jack's mother took my hands, her eyes welling up with tears, her voice full of affection. "You dear child. It's been so hard on you all these years." I stood there, stunned. Jack wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on the top of my head, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. "Mom, Dad. This is Lily. My fiancée." After returning from the Donovan estate, I felt like I was walking on clouds. The happiness had come so quickly, so completely, that it felt surreal. On Wednesday afternoon, I went to the university library alone to return some books. By the time I left campus, the sky was already growing dark. I had just turned onto the quiet side street that led to the condo when a black van screeched to a halt in front of me. The side door slid open with a harsh rattle. Before I could react, a rough hand clamped over my mouth and nose. The sharp, chemical smell of chloroform invaded my lungs. I managed only a small, choked cry before my consciousness plunged into darkness. When I woke up, I was in an abandoned warehouse. My hands and feet were bound to a chair with thick, coarse rope that cut painfully into my skin. The air smelled of rust and dust. A figure emerged from the shadows. Backlit, I couldn't see his face, only his crazed, twisted silhouette. "Lily, you're awake." That voice. Oh. It was Caleb. He looked far worse than the last time I'd seen him. His eyes were sunken, his greasy hair was matted to his forehead, and his gaze was filled with a venomous insanity. He stalked toward me, dragging a metal can that was dripping gasoline. "Are you surprised, wondering how I still have the guts to come after you?" He let out a harsh, ugly laugh that sounded like a broken accordion. "I have nothing left, my family is ruined, I'm living on the street, and it's all thanks to you and your precious Jack." I struggled against the ropes, a furious growl rising in my throat. He seemed to enjoy my helplessness, and he kicked my chair hard. "Don't worry. Soon, he'll be joining me in hell." He crouched down, his face, which I had once found attractive, now nothing but a monstrous sneer. I reported him. Abuse of power, misuse of authority, using military connections to crush a private enterprise. The evidence? I fabricated some of it. But he really did make a move, and the people in charge would rather destroy an innocent man than risk being wrong. Right now, he's under internal investigation. Soon, they'll strip him of his rank, revoke his titles, and he'll be a pariah that everyone spits on. My blood froze in my veins. A fear deeper than the fear of death washed over me in a suffocating wave. My heart hammered against my ribs, not for my own safety, but for his. How could Jack's life be ruined because of me? Despair washed over me, a suffocating tide. Just then, the piercing wail of a siren cut through the silence outside, growing rapidly closer. Caleb's face went white. He whipped his head around, his eyes wild with the desperation of a cornered animal. He lifted the gas can, screaming hysterically, "It's too late. I'm taking you both down with me." He was about to douse me in gasoline when the warehouse's massive iron doors exploded inward with a deafening bang, thrown open by brute force. Blinding floodlights poured in, followed by the sound of rapid, heavy footsteps. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the light, the gold insignia on his uniform glinting through the dust-filled air. It was Jack. His handsome face was a mask of icy fury, his dark eyes burning with a rage that could scorch the earth. Behind him, a team of tactical officers swarmed in, securing the scene with practiced efficiency. Caleb froze, the gas can dropping from his hand and clattering to the floor, spilling fuel everywhere. He was a statue of pure terror. Jack didn't even glance at him. He walked straight to me and knelt, his long fingers working quickly and expertly at the ropes on my wrists. The rough hemp had left angry red welts on my skin. He stroked them gently, his eyes filled with a heart-wrenching pain that nearly drowned me. "Lily, it's okay. You're safe," he murmured, his voice laced with a tremor he couldn't hide. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. His familiar, comforting scent of pine and strength enveloped me, chasing away all the fear and cold. I gripped the front of his uniform, burying my face in his broad chest, desperate to absorb his warmth and presence. "But the investigation?" I asked, my voice hoarse and choked with tears. He stroked my back, his deep voice rumbling in my ear. "That was to draw the snake out of its hole, sweetheart." I pulled back, looking up into his deep eyes. The light in them was sharper than ever, tinged with a quiet, calculated brilliance. "We had intel that Caleb was trying to dig up dirt on me, looking for revenge," he explained, his tone casual, as if discussing the weather. "If he wanted to play, I figured would play for keeps." His voice was steady, but it carried an undercurrent of absolute ruthlessness. I understood then. He had never been on the defensive. From the very beginning, he was the one setting the board. 13. As the officers hauled Caleb away, his curses faded into the night. Jack helped me into his vehicle and started cleaning the rope burns on my wrists with a first aid kit. His movements were gentle, his focus absolute, as if he were handling the most fragile treasure in the world. "Zoe," I began hesitantly, the image of her crying on the news flashing in my mind. "Why did she turn on him?" Jack's hands paused for a fraction of a second. He looked up, his gaze deep and serious. "It wasn't a betrayal. It was revenge." He explained succinctly, the Carters and the Vances were old family friends. Years ago, Caleb's father orchestrated a hostile takeover of the Carter family's company. He framed Zoe's father, ruined them, and drove her parents to their deaths. I stared at him, completely shocked. So Zoe had only gotten close to Caleb for this? "Zoe has been waiting for this day for years," Jack said, his voice devoid of pity, a simple statement of fact. "She was collecting evidence against the Vances the entire time, just waiting for an opening." He leaned in, his warm breath ghosting over my ear, his whisper almost hypnotic. "I just gave her the opportunity to speed things up." I looked at him, at his calm face that held such immense power. He wasn't just a soldier who relied on strength. His intelligence and strategic mind were far more formidable than his physical prowess. He was a grandmaster moving pieces from outside the board, watching the players, and at the perfect moment, making the one move that brought the entire game to its conclusion. I leaned in and rested my head on his shoulder. "Jack," I whispered. He tightened his arm around me, holding me closer. 14. Back at the condo, Jack didn't turn on the lights. He set me down on the living room sofa and knelt before me. By the soft moonlight filtering through the window, he traced the lines of my face with his eyes. His deep gaze swirled with the aftermath of fear and the overwhelming joy of having me back safe. "Lily," he spoke, his voice incredibly hoarse, as if it had been scraped with sandpaper. "Marry me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. An order delivered with the force of a command, yet laced with the most vulnerable plea. My heart slammed against my ribs, the impact vibrating through my entire body. Tears spilled over and streamed down my cheeks. I nodded frantically, throwing myself into his arms. Yes. One word, the most certain answer of my entire life. He crushed me to him, his hold so tight it felt like he was trying to merge me with his very bones. 3 days later, Jack took me to my parents' house. My mom and dad sat on the sofa, their expressions a complicated mix as they looked at us standing side by side. My mother's eyes reddened first. She took my hand, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. My father, the tough, stoic soldier, looked at his most prized subordinate, his best friend, who was now holding his only daughter's hand. He was silent for a long time. He lit a cigarette, took a long drag, and slowly blew out the smoke. The room was thick with unspoken emotion. Finally, he looked at Jack, his eyes full of acceptance, nostalgia, and a touch of a father's helpless resignation. "Well, Donovan," my dad said, his voice a low rumble. "What are you going to call me now?" "Sir." "Or Dad?" The single sentence shattered the tension in the room. My mom laughed through her tears and playfully smacked my dad's arm. Jack stood at perfect attention, looked my father straight in the eye, and said in a clear, ringing voice, "Dad." Epilogue: he led me into his home office. Walking over to his desk, he used a small key to unlock the bottom drawer. I had assumed it held classified files. But what he pulled out was a thick stack of photographs. The first was of a teenage girl in a school uniform, sitting by a window, the sunlight gilding the edges of her hair. The second was of me at 18, making a wish over a birthday cake, my eyes reflecting the candlelight. One after another, they spanned my entire life, from elementary school through college. They were all of me. My breath hitched. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a warm, gentle hand, aching and burning all at once. In all the years I never knew, he had loved me for this long. Jack wrapped his arms around me from behind, his solid chest against my back, his chin resting gently on my head. His warm breath tickled my ear, his voice low and rich, like the final, lingering note of a cello. "Lily, you were the one thing in my life I never let myself want. Every time you called me your guardian, your Uncle Jack, it was a line I knew I couldn't cross." I turned in his arms, standing on my toes to try and kiss him. But I couldn't reach. He chuckled, then scooped me up by the waist. I wrapped my legs around him. "Then I won't call you that anymore. I'll call you my husband." Jack carried me toward the bedroom, his strides long and purposeful. He loved me again and again. And that's all I can write, before this story gets a rating it doesn't need.